Next on the news, there's just days till they break, but the Supreme Court has the country holding its breath.
This is what democracy looks like.
What will happen with Roe v. Wade? No decision, but violence is already brewing. More than 60 pro-life organizations targeted. Many asking, is the president doing enough? But this was decided, struck down, an opinion that could make it easier for millions of Americans to carry. Plus, a shark attack survivor.
We were just glad that we could be there to help.
He'll live to tell his tale thanks to these two good Samaritans. I'm Christine Persichetti. A busy night of Currents News starts right now. Just one of the cases the country's been waiting for, shot down and struck down. The Supreme Court with a major Second Amendment decision that could lead to even more armed Americans. But the other still in limbo, the future of abortion in the United States hanging in the balance. We begin with the undecided, the looming decision. The country is now bracing for the Supreme Court to possibly strike down Roe v. Wade as soon as Friday, potentially setting off mass protests from coast to coast. For weeks, demonstrators have been gathering outside of the Supreme Court, but it all comes down to these last few days. These protests could be just the beginning of what's to come if the justices decide to overturn Roe v. Wade, which seems more likely than ever following a leak of a draft opinion last month. Homeland Security says that leak led to an increase in violent threats from pro-abortion rights extremists, like the man who sought to kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh. So now there's a high fence around the highest court in the land. And
last month, I accelerated the protection of all the justices' residences 24/7.
Meanwhile, attacks on pro-life centers seem to have ramped up this month. Among them, one center in upstate New York was destroyed by fire, and one in North Carolina was spray painted with the words, "If abortions aren't safe, neither are you." The U.S. bishops are pleading for peace as these attacks mount, releasing a statement reading in part, "We urge our elected officials to take a strong stand against this violence and our law enforcement authorities to increase their vigilance in protecting those who are in increased danger." Now, if the court does decide to overturn the decades-long ruling as soon as Friday, abortion rights would be left up to states, and New York says those are here to stay.
The sky is on the verge of falling literally in the next week or two. That is a very real possibility. And that's why we're here today.
This was last Monday when Governor Kathy Hochul took steps to protect abortion in New York State by signing a package of bills. They include protecting women who visit New York to get an abortion and protecting medical professionals who perform the procedure from lawsuits and criminal charges.
The women of New York will never be subjugated to government-mandated pregnancies.
After that bill signing, the New York State Catholic Conference released a statement saying, "At a time when women and children need more support than ever, we are disappointed to see New York continue to focus on promoting abortion." This package of bills seeks to encourage abortion tourism rather than helping women and children who may be in need. More now on the man who's accused of trying to murder Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Nicholas Roski was in court and pleaded not guilty during his arraignment Wednesday. Investigators say he showed up at Kavanaugh's Maryland home with a gun earlier this month and later told police he planned to kill, quote, a specific United States Supreme Court justice. He was apparently upset about the leak of the draft opinion. If convicted, he faces life in prison. As we mentioned, that's not the only violence we've seen since the leak last month. According to the Family Research Council, an evangelical think tank, there's been more than 60 attacks on pro-life organizations and people across the country. Let's take a closer look. There's been 32 incidents of arson or vandalism at pregnancy resource centers. Another 15 resulted in the destruction of church property, and 16 others included disruptions at masses, church services, and pro-life demonstrations. But supposedly the worst has yet to come. The pro-abortion group Jane's Revenge, which has taken credit for a number of these attacks, has vowed a night of violence if Roe v. Wade is overturned. President Biden hasn't addressed the threat personally, but the White House press secretary says he denounces any acts of violence.
Violence and destruction of property have no place in our country under any circumstance, and the president denounces this action. Actions like this are completely unacceptable, regardless of our politics.
Many believe the president, an abortion supporter, hasn't done enough to condemn the violence. The big question everyone is asking: what happens next if Roe v. Wade is indeed overturned? Well, the tablet has your answers. The news team created a thorough guide, Abortion in America, The Fight for Life. The jam-packed 12-page document available online offers a state-by-state look at statistics so you can see where the procedure is the most common. It also offers a comprehensive map you won't see anywhere else, showing current abortion laws throughout the United States and how they could change. There's also a resource guide for mothers and moms-to-be in the Diocese of Brooklyn, including a list of pregnancy centers and housing programs meant to help families choose life. Again, that's online at thetablet.org. Turning now to the other pro-life case that was actually decided. It's the largest expansion of gun rights in a decade. The Supreme Court on Thursday shot down a New York gun law that placed restrictions on carrying a concealed firearm outside the home. That verdict comes as the country continues to battle gun violence. Gloria Pazmino has the story.
This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible.
Fierce reaction after the Supreme Court struck down a New York law enacted more than a century ago, which restricted the carrying of concealed handguns outside the home. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association had argued the law was unconstitutional. Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the 6-3 majority, agreed. Because the state of New York issues public carry licenses only when an applicant demonstrates a special need for self-defense, we conclude that the state's licensing regime violates the Constitution. The decision is the widest expansion of gun rights in a decade and comes on the heels of a wave of deadly mass shootings across the country, most recently at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. In a dissent joined by other liberal members of the court, Justice Stephen Breyer wrote the ruling would severely burden states' efforts to curb gun violence. But the National Rifle Association hailed the decision, calling it a monumental win for NRA members and for gun owners across the country.
The right of self-defense is the core of the Second Amendment right, and that's what this case in New York is about.
Gloria Pazmino, Current News.
Following the Supreme Court's decision, the New York State Catholic Conference reiterated their stance for reasonable gun laws, saying in part, "We are troubled that the court has overturned a law dating back more than a century that has been largely accepted by the state's population for all of that time." The duly elected members of the state legislature could have at any time over the past 110 years revisited its policies on how it licenses individuals for the purpose of carrying concealed handguns outside the home if it was the will of the citizens of the state. New York City Mayor Eric Adams wasted no time voicing his thoughts on the court's decision. Speaking at a press conference Thursday, he said this ruling will put New Yorkers at further risk of gun violence.
There's no place in the nation that the decision affects as much as New Yorkers. And we are prepared to set an example that will lead the country of how do we fight back on this decision.
Adams also pledged to conduct a comprehensive review on how the city defines places where carrying firearms is banned and will review the application process to ensure only those who are qualified can obtain a concealed carry license. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling, the law is not off the books. You cannot just carry a gun around the city now. Nothing has changed just yet. The case will now be sent back to a lower court, which is then expected to strike down the law. Until then, Governor Kathy Hochul is calling for a special legislative session to review the permitting process. And NYPD Commissioner Keishant Sewell is warning New Yorkers that if you carry a weapon illegally, you will be arrested. Here's something that's already changed in New York City, and you probably didn't even know about it. If you're riding the subway, you're being watched. The MTA has put hidden cameras on 65 train cars in the past 6 weeks. That's according to transit officials who say the surveillance is part of a pilot program meant to test the technology's effectiveness in solving transit crimes. The cameras aren't monitored 24/7. Instead, they are intended to be used by cops to pull evidence. The MTA says they will eventually put up signage informing riders they are being recorded. And a warning from the Federal Reserve: be prepared for even more interest rate increases. It's an attempt to avoid a recession, but also restore price stability. But controlling both is a huge task. The chairman, Jerome Powell, told lawmakers yesterday raising interest rates could prove useless. It won't do much to lower the high prices for gas and groceries, and rate hikes could actually be the thing to tip the economy into recession. President Joe Biden has a plan to lower the price of gas. He wants to suspend the federal gas tax until the end of September. That tax is 18 cents a gallon. But the move requires congressional approval, and lawmakers are skeptical. And they're not the only ones pushing back. Economists say a federal gas tax holiday won't really relieve any pain at the pump. Instead, it could actually make inflation worse. Amy Kiley looks at why.
Why we're still paying so much for gas. I mean, it's an everyday necessity.
Lawmakers are under pressure to lower fuel prices. The president wants a reluctant Congress to pass a 3-month federal gas tax holiday. The problem is any significant price drop at the pump would depend on
if we could get states to join, and if oil companies and refineries to pass on those cost savings to consumers.
So those businesses wouldn't have to pay the 18 cents a gallon, but
we've had now evidence to think that the oil companies would pass that on to the consumer.
I want to get more data.
Some states have tried suspending their gas taxes, with consumers seeing some benefit. For other states, it's not so easy.
Our tax is constitutionally tied to infrastructure investments.
Then come the matters of supply and demand.
We have a supply problem that needs to be dealt with if you want to get prices down.
Global circumstances are restricting supply. Lower gas prices could increase demand. Some economists worry that combination could result in more inflation and higher interest rates. Already, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell signaling another interest hike and testifying before a House committee today. The good news is gas prices have dropped a few cents a gallon since last week.
I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Let's take a closer look at those gas prices. According to GasBuddy.com, the current national average for a gallon of gas is $4.93. And in New York City, the average is $5.05 per gallon, which is a slight improvement compared to 2 weeks ago when the city's average hit a high of $5.16 per gallon. Still ahead on Currents News, the future of the company accused of marketing e-cigarettes to kids appears to be going up in smoke. The World Meeting of Families is back after a 2-year hiatus. Our correspondent in Rome is part of the party.
The 10th World Meeting of Families is underway here in Rome. See how Pope Francis kicked off the 5 days of events here at the Vatican, up next.
And later, what likely would have been a deadly encounter with a shark ends with an amazing rescue for one swimmer. The story of being at the wrong place and the right place at the same time. Next. The e-cigarette company Juul may finally be meeting its end in the U.S. The FDA announcing the company must stop selling and distributing its products, and anything currently in stores must be taken off the shelves. The federal government has been investigating the company the past 2 years over claims that they contributed to a surge of youth vaping. Juul said it will appeal the FDA's ruling. Juul isn't the only company the FDA has set their sights on. The Biden administration is cracking down on the entire tobacco industry, proposing a bold idea in hopes of making cigarettes less addicting. As Mandy Gaither reports, the proposal could have a huge impact on public health.
The future of tobacco in the U.S. up in the air. The level of nicotine allowed in cigarettes and other tobacco products could be changing.
Reducing nicotine in cigarettes will for the first time really make smoking a free choice.
The FDA says nicotine is the ingredient that makes it hard for some people to quit smoking. A new proposed rule would establish a maximum nicotine level in cigarettes and other tobacco products.
We'll do more to reduce the number of people who die from tobacco use than any other single action that could have been taken.
According to the CDC, cigarette smoking causes about 1 in every 5 deaths in the U.S. every year. Data from 2014 shows more than 480,000 deaths annually. Matthew Myers, president of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, says the new rule would also lower the number of children who become addicted to tobacco.
Tobacco itself does not taste good to a young person. They continue to smoke only because they become addicted. This will fundamentally transform the health of our young people.
The regulations wouldn't happen overnight, and there's no guarantee the proposed rule would be enacted. The FDA will have to issue their proposal, then have public comment, which could take a year or more. Experts say it's likely that tobacco companies would then sue to keep the rule from going into place. I'm Mandy Gaither.
The FDA's decision to combat e-cigarettes and restrict nicotine levels in cigarettes was made based off of the 2021 National Youth Tobacco Survey. According to the report, about 2.5 million middle and high school students used e-cigarettes in 2021, and 1.9 million reported having used flavored tobacco products. Among those who used e-cigarettes, the most cited reasons for use were feelings of anxiety, stress, or depression. This was the first year the National Youth Tobacco Survey was conducted online instead of in schools, and the study authors cautioned against comparing the results against previous years due to potential underreporting. Also tonight, a celebration of faith and fellowship. This emotional rendition of Hallelujah kicking off a global event. A moment Catholics across the globe have been waiting for. Back for the first time since the pandemic, the Festival of Families kicked off the Vatican's World Meeting. The event is a chance for everyone, regardless of age, to share faith and fellowship with the Holy Father. Justin McClellan will be there all week long. Here he is in St. Peter's Square.
The 10th World Meeting of the Families is in full swing here in Rome, with families from across the world gathered here at the Vatican. The 5 days of events kicked off last night with a Festival of Families, which included beautiful musical performances, testimonies of faith from families, and even an address from the Pope. Take a look. This rendition of Leonard Cohen's Alleluia wowed the families gathered in the Vatican's Paul VI Audience Hall to mark the start of the 10th World Meeting of Families and welcome Pope Francis onto the stage. The Pope heard the stories of several families, including a mother and daughter from Ukraine, who were taken in by an Italian family when they became refugees. And while they spoke, some of the youngest members of their host family couldn't help but run across the stage and play in front of Pope Francis. The Pope then shared these words of encouragement with Catholic families.
Partire della vostra situazione reale e da lì provare a camminare insieme. Insieme come sposi, insieme nella vostra famiglia, insieme ad altre famiglie, insieme con la Chiesa.
The event introduced 3 days of conferences dedicated to Catholic family life, on topics as wide-ranging from being a Christian family in the digital age to confronting situations of family violence. Well, we just heard the keynote address from an American couple to kick off this World Meeting of Families, which will feature 3 days of lecturers and speakers to explore this year's theme, family love, a vocation and a path to holiness. In St. Peter's Square, Justin McClellan, Current News.
The official patrons of the World Meeting of Families are a couple on the road to sainthood, a perfect example of a modern-day power couple. Meet Luigi and Maria Beltrami Quattrocchi. It seems they were quite the duo. They are actually the first couple to ever be beatified. The Italian tag team were married for 45 years, and those years weren't exactly easy. They survived 2 world wars together. They gave birth to a daughter despite doctors advising to get an abortion, and then they raised their 4 children in the faith, all of them growing up to serve the church in different ways. A professor pushing for their canonization has studied the couple. She tells us that Maria left behind writings on the Eucharist and marriage, items that influenced her sons.
Personalizzato. These are examples of what a mother wants to remind her sons of what she considers important. She did this through writing, and it is a proof of the educational attention that Maria continued to give even when her sons were ordained priests.
The couple helped to promote youth scouting in Italy, and they even assisted at least 150 people fleeing Nazi persecution during World War II. Their relics can be venerated inside St. Peter's Basilica during the World Meeting. And from Rome straight to the green, it's Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens annual Golf Classic. And what a beautiful day it was to hit the links. Foursomes were out in full force Thursday to participate in a day of caddies and clubs at the North Hills Country Club in Manhasset. The outing celebrates the life of Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Joseph Sullivan, who dedicated his time on earth to Catholic charities. The Golf Classic helps to keep his legacy alive. It benefits Catholic Charities' many programs and services that help families get a head start on life. In years past, the Classic has raised over $100,000. We will let you know how much they raised this year in the upcoming edition of The Tablet. And speaking of the newspaper, here's another story you won't want to miss. It's been a decade of DACA, but there's still no path to citizenship for dreamers. In this week's edition, our reporters talk to young immigrants who are turning to the church as they deal with that uncertain future. 10 years after the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals passing, they're still looking to Congress to help them stay in the country they call home. But to hear their full story, you'll have to pick up the paper. So be sure to head to your local church to read more about these stories, or if you want to subscribe to receive future editions, just go to their website, thetablet.org. Still to come on Currents News, talk about being in the right place at the right time. We'll hear from the couple who saved a surfer from a shark. Finally, talk about a case of amazing luck. A California man was saved from a shark attack by a couple who were both trained for emergency situations. And as Felix Cortez explains, that's not the only reason people are saying this chance encounter was a 1 in a million opportunity.
What was it that caught your attention?
The screaming for help.
He was screaming for help. You could tell just the sound and the emotion in his voice that there was something definitely wrong. And he was slapping the water. I wasn't sure if that was some sort of thing that he was trying to get something away from him or just trying to draw attention to himself.
Yeah. The Folsom couple were paddleboarding just off Lover's Point when they came across the swimmer who had just been attacked by a shark. She's a nurse, he's a Sacramento police officer.
As a police officer, I respond to emergencies all the time, so I don't think there was ever a question of whether or not we were going to go. It was just how fast we were going to be able to get there.
The swimmer was bitten on his torso, severely injured. The couple had to act quickly.
We had to quickly cut his wetsuit off of him and open it all up, and then try to, apply the tourniquets to each limb and also to his abdomen, put the pressure there because he was bleeding severely.
The rescue caught on this surveillance video from a nearby restaurant. The couple were in town celebrating their wedding anniversary.
Not really the 1 in a million opportunity we were looking for.
Right.
We were just glad that we could be there to help, and also Heath, the surfer, was spectacular. He was amazing.
Amazing. That was Felix Cortez reporting. An aerial search showed no signs of the wannabe Jaws. Still, Lovers Point and nearby beaches will be closed until Saturday as a precaution. Good idea. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.